How's it going, guys? It's Kass. As always, if you've been enjoying my content, then feel free to subscribe. I want to preface this video by saying that this video is talking about specifically datamined patches, although the majority of the time these patches are correct, and these are subject to change. So although this change that we're going to be talking about is significant and is pretty bad, it could potentially change and hopefully will change. And that's the point around making these videos. These videos aren't necessarily to be too negative about the class. There will be changes that happen that are not good, that get negative feedback, that will get reverted. And that's really the goal of making these videos, is to help develop an understanding to the majority of people that play Demon Hunter, so they can provoke their own or get their own opinion based off of the things that I present. My goal is to not have people just develop my own opinions. I don't want to create an echo chamber here where people just say what I say and it is what is. My goal is to present my argument and allow people to change their opinion based on that. So anytime that I make a video specifically talking about nerfs or changes to the class, my goal isn't for Blizzard to specifically implement those, but to provoke the opinions of others to allow an overall change that's better for the class. I hope that makes sense. All right, so into the video specifically, okay? So these are datamined changes that will be coming in the next beta patch. We see that Blizzard has been constantly trying to make Unbound Chaos work correctly. Unfortunately, they have not been able to do that, and today they decided just to remove it completely. With Unbound Chaos specifically, and you can test this right now on BTR, if you watch your character do the actual slam of Unbound Chaos, there's a ton of variance in when it actually hits things. Even the end of Fel Rush isn't really necessarily a specific vector or a specific point. It varies on elevation and terrain. There's a lot of very in-depth calculation that goes into calculating the end of a Fel Rush. And that has been causing general issues with Unbound Chaos, hitting things when it's not supposed to hit things, or missing things when it should have hit things based off of what the user's actually seeing. So your Fel Rush actually goes to a place where you expect it to hit, but it hits either just before or just after it because of some weird calculations in the end of Fel Rush. And this was a problem with Unbound Chaos that many people ran into, and it caused a lot of issues with the talent. This talent is incredibly powerful and is very fun to use, and a button that you have to think about when to actually be pressing. I think this talent is incredibly good, and I think it was a very, very well designed talent. This was our best talent by far, damage wise, which honestly probably was going to be nerfed anyway, and in this patch actually was nerfed before it was removed. This is where it gets kind of to that point where it's more of an annoyance than anything. You give players access to a new talent, and in this case, this isn't even something that was just on beta. This was something that is still in the game now, and you implement it to live. So people are going to have access to this talent on live, be using this talent, enjoying this talent, and then you're going to take it away from them just because you can't do the correct calculations for this talent. Now, a very easy change to this talent would be the last monster you hit is when it hits, or the first monster you hit with Fel Rush is when it hits. Now, honestly, that makes it a little bit harder to actually use in some situations when you have larger pack sizes. However, the general area of Unbound Chaos could have been increased to account for that. Instead, they wanted to continue it with this final general idea of Fel Rush being when Unbound Chaos procs. It makes no sense to dictate something like that. It would be a much easier change to do either of the things that I said, having it be the last thing that gets hit by it, or the first thing. The first thing would be infinitely easier to do because all you have to do is, if damage is procced, then proc Unbound Chaos. It's very easy. And in a single target situation, nothing is changed. It also makes it so you don't have to worry about the unpredictability of when the end of Fel Rush actually occurs. So that already solves Unbound Chaos and makes it to a point where it has the same consistency and it's user based and not based off of the terrain that you're actually Fel Rushing on. That's the easiest way that they could have changed it. But unfortunately, they've decided that they want to remove it and implement a new talent. That new talent is still named Unbound Chaos for some reason unknown. And what it basically is it's a over analyzed or over engineered version of what it's replacing. And that's the most important thing that I want to point out is when you're developing something, the whole idea of making changes to anything, you have to think about the first thing that you're doing is what you're changing. And then if it's in the same patch or in the same ballpark of the time frame, you have to think about what originally was changed from to cause the primary change. So when we think back to other talents that were never used, one of those talents that were never used, except for beginning of Legion, was Fel Mastery. And Fel Mastery was in row 3, but unfortunately due to the dominance of Trial of Ruin, no one literally would ever use that ability. At the beginning of BFA, we see Fel Mastery made Fel Rush do 100% increased damage. At the start of beta for BFA, for Shadowlands, that got increased to 150%, and then it got increased to, it stayed at 150%, but it got removed for Unbound Chaos. So the original talent that Unbound Chaos replaced was Fel Mastery. Fel Mastery was a flat damage increase to Fel Rush. Now, Unbound Chaos, which replaced Fel Mastery, is now getting replaced by a new version of Unbound Chaos, which makes it so when you press Immolation Aura, which only happens every 20-ish seconds, the flat cooldown is like 30 seconds, but is based off of haste. So a lot of people get that around like 18 seconds to like 20-ish seconds, depending on your haste. Now, it basically says, when we go back, whenever you press Immolation Aura, your next Fel Rush is increased by 300%. So not Fel Rush is increased by 300% for 20 seconds, but your next, so one single Fel Rush is increased by that variable. We're going to look at some numbers here. And I've decided to use Word today. If you guys, I normally use Paint. I don't know what you guys prefer. I don't know what's easier for you guys to see. So if you guys want to provide some feedback about using Word versus using Paint in my other videos, then feel free. If you don't really care, then don't worry about it. Like I said before, Immolation Aura's base cooldown is 30 seconds, but with haste, we're going to say it's around like 20-ish seconds. I know this can get lower, so give or take some of these calculations. Fel Rush has 2 charges and then a 10-second recharge. So that means you get 2 Fel Rushes every 20 seconds. That's after you've already used the first 2 charges. At the beginning of the fight, in the first 20 seconds, you would actually get 4 Fel Rushes because you have 2 Fel Rushes already saved up. So if you think about it, if you press Fel Rush twice in a row, obviously there's GCDs and things like that we have, and cast time and animation time that we have to think about. But if we think about it in just a vacuum with none of those variables, you'd be getting those 2 presses, then you get 2 10-second recharges to get those 2 presses again. So it's really actually 4 Fel Rushes at the beginning of a fight in the first 20 seconds, and we'll see those calculations lower in this document. Fel Mastery, which was the removed talent before Unbound Chaos, which I talked about, is a 150% increased flat damage for Fel Rush. Fel Rush damage is 25.3% attack power in Chaos, so this value is increased by your mastery. And at level 52, we get rank 3 Fel Rush, which gives us 25% increased damage on Fel Rush, which makes it at level 60, your Fel Rush is doing now 31.625% attack power and chaos damage. So then when we look at the removed Fel Mastery, what we just looked up here, in a 60-second window, we get 8 Fel Rushes, and then we would do that times 1.5 for the 150% increased damage that we get from the talent. So we do 1.5 times 8 times that 31.625 that we calculated up here, which is the base damage of Fel Rush. And that gives us 379.5% attack power in total damage done by that talent over a 60-second window. When we look at the brand new talent in that same 60-second window, we get 4 Fel Rushes, because you get the initial Fel Rush when you press Immolation Aura plus Fel Rush, and then we have to wait the Immolation Aura cooldown, which we are setting at 20%, or at 20 seconds, so we get 3 extra ones over the duration of the fight. That's that same situation where it's in a bubble. We aren't talking about GCDs, we aren't talking about animations or anything like that. But it is also important to talk about that this forces you to press an extra GCD, whereas the original talent did not. So we're actually saving GCDs with the Fel Mastery talent. The new talent that is implemented, Unbound Chaos 2.0, basically, is 4 Fel Rushes. So we have 300%, so that's where this 3 comes in, and that's the flat damage increase that we're getting with the new talent. Then we have 4, which is the Fel Rushes, and then we have the base Fel Rush damage, and it's actually the exact same. So this talent makes you press an additional GCD, but gives you the exact same result as the original talent that they removed. So we're spending time developing things, releasing them to allow people to enjoy, only to take it away from them and implement something new that makes the original talents that we have had in the game since the very beginning of Demon Hunter's existence. We just make a version of it that's worse. I just want that to sink in. The original value that they buffed at the beginning of Shadowlands, that they thought was not good enough, that they replaced with Unbound Chaos, is now better than what they're implementing. And just to be as clear as I can be, right? Let's just look at Unbound Chaos. So Unbound Chaos got its damage nerfed in the same patch that it got removed. Originally, Unbound Chaos did 275% attack power, and I believe still does if you test it right now on pre-patch. Unbound Chaos works the exact same way, where you get 4 Fel Rushes in that window. The only difference is the damage that it does is its own entity. It's not a part of Fel Rush. What that means is the actual damage isn't modified by Fel Rush's damage. It's modified only by Unbound Chaos's damage. However, I believe like even the 25% increased Fel Rush damage increase doesn't actually affect any of the modifiers from talents. So I don't think those are actually like multiplying each other or anything crazy like that. When we just look at the numbers of the old Unbound Chaos, 4 Fel Rushes in that same 60-second window, which we saw prior with the new 2.0 Unbound Chaos, for 233.75% attack power times 4 is 935% attack power. The replacement talent for Unbound Chaos is actually almost 60% less damage. And another point that I'd like to make, and this is going to be my closing point, is when we think about the new Momentum Legendary, it makes it so we have more uptime on Fel Rush. However, that has 0 interaction with this new talent. This new talent is gated specifically by Immolation Aura. If we went back to the old Fel Mastery, it would actually be significantly better than the new talent. So even though these percents say that they're the same, that's without the new legendary. If you were playing a momentum based build and using the new 30% increased cooldown of momentum, instead of getting 8 Fel Rushes in this window, you'd be getting 10.4. So this number is actually 30% more than this number when using the new legendary, if they made it so the original talent worked. My biggest point of this video is, if we're going to be making new changes, we have to be thinking about what we are replacing originally And we have to make sure that we aren't just going in a circle where we're replacing things and making them worse than what we're originally replacing in the beginning. As always, if you liked the video, leave a like. If you didn't like the video, F5, refresh, try it again. Maybe you'll like it the second time. Have a good one.